Hey everyone, Dr. Sally here, and this is Headspace for the Workplace. It's a podcast where we learn how to cultivate vibrant and psychologically healthy and safe workplaces. And today, like always, I have an incredible expert coming to us from Missouri, Dr. John Gaal. And we're going to talk about his research into what happens in the first 48 hours that is so critical in what we call the postvention response. What do we do after there has been a suicide death? And what can a workplace do to mitigate the impact of a suicide death, both from a grief and trauma response in those first 48 hours? I know for me, when I was thinking about this, those first 48 hours, I couldn't drive. I couldn't, it was longer than that, but there, you're very in a shock place. And there was lots that my workplace got right in helping me through it. So John, welcome to the show.
Well, thank you very much. I appreciate being here.
Awesome. What are the two things that our listeners are going to walk away with from this conversation?
Well, I hope they understand the need to find willing partners without barriers. That's number one. And number two, the importance of engaging trained peer supporters.
Yes, we'll dive into each of those in just a second. Both really important. But first, let's let the audience know a little bit more about you, John. You have lots that you do. What specifically are you doing in this place about postvention?
So I had my son pass away by suicide back in March of 2017. And then in the summer of 21, a colleague called me late on a Saturday night, very unexpectedly. And I just took the call because, he rarely calls me during the week. So on a Saturday night, I knew it had to be something important. And of course it was. He had just lost his son to suicide. And he said, John, you're the only person I know, the only parent I know who lost a child to suicide. Do you have a few minutes to talk? And so we did. We spoke for upwards of an hour, tried to provide him with some ideas for support resources and things of that nature. And then I just told him, tomorrow's going to be really hectic, so you won't hear from me tomorrow. But I promise you, I will call you on Monday. And I did. I followed up on Monday, and I was pleased to find out that he and his wife, as well as his children, tapped into a number of the resources I had suggested. And you could already start to see the healing process in that short of a time. And then a year ago, Sally, as you and I discussed before, between essentially the end of July of 24 to the end of October, in those 12 weeks, I took 8 more calls like that, 8 more suicide-related calls. And that just kind of pushed me to a point where I have to quit thinking about this and I have to start doing about this. So I reached out to a person, a doctor of psychology, colleague of mine over in London area, and shared with her what was going on. And she basically encouraged me to undertake a study. And I really just can feel through those 8 calls plus the one a few years prior, and then from my own situation, that there was a need to fill that gap, those first 48 to 72 hours. We needed to do something because there was a lack of resources for people to turn to, and obviously a need to create something in that space and not have to recreate the wheel every time you got a similar phone call. So I undertook a study project, and it has 4 phases. I'm coming to the close of the project right now. The first phase consisted of surveys where I surveyed people across the spectrum of 5 categories. I won't go into depth on every one of those, but it was from loss survivors to construction pros to first responders to researchers.
I'm pretty sure I was in that phase, right?
Yeah. Yes. So it sent out 64 on November the 15th of 24, closed the first survey on December 3rd of 24, and I got 64 back. And so in the world of research, that's unheard of. And so I think that sent a clear message to me, to my head and my heart, that people want to do something about this. And so I moved to the next stage, which was doing 15 interviews, one-on-one interviews, again, with people from all of those 5 buckets, I call them, of categories, and upwards of input from 5 different countries. And then I moved to the third phase, and each phase I utilize what I learned to improve the next phase, so kind of a Delphi technique. And then in the third phase, I brought X number of people from the interviews and X number and Y number of people from the surveys together for a focus group. Now, that was more of a convenient sample because I'm here in St. Louis, so I found people in St. Louis. And we convened late in August, just a few months ago, and we did a 2-hour session. And I shared with them because the surveyees and the interviewees, those 2 groups of participants didn't intersect. So they were 64 interviews, 64 surveyees, 15 interviewees. So I reached out to 18 locally. 12 said they were interested. 8 showed up, which made it really nice because I was able to break them into groups of 4. We had 4 stations. I shared with them the findings from the surveys and the interviews so that they were on a level playing field when they moved through those stations together. And then they came back and reported out what they found. So the focus group process really was giving them marching orders to say, what the findings are, go to these 4 stations, come back and tell me what you want me to do with what we know now. And so what I call end products. So the 4th phase is developing those end products. So that's the phase I'm in right now. So essentially an article is top of mind. Followed almost immediately with guidebooks, and I say that plural because I think there's 2 audiences. There's trainers, and then there's the rank and file people who need to be trained in whether they're white collar, blue collar in the field, and then the trainings. The 2 sets of trainings, whether it's a training for the rank and file or a training for the trainers, and then finally. I'm working with a local university that does work in the safety space, and we're going to try to produce a video that can be accessed from anywhere to cover this concept of what I call acute postvention in the U.S. construction industry.
Yeah, because sometimes you're not going to remember where you put your training manual, but you might be able to get a video just in time to make sure that you don't miss some important steps. So again, I'm thinking about all the kinds of things we went through in the first 72 hours and how helpful it would have been to have certain kinds of support. So let's go. Actually, before we get there, you did something in Egypt. What did you do?
Oh, well, so, one of the things is that it never ceases to amaze me when you're out and you run into maybe old teachers, especially high school teachers. They get a kick out of the fact that I am where I am today because I was on 4 years of probation my first month of high school. But it was truly in my apprenticeship, my carpentry apprenticeship, that I learned how to learn, and actually was able to leverage that into helping others learn. And so an outgrowth of that was the fact that in September of 1997, I had the opportunity through a USAID grant to help set up a construction trades apprenticeship school on the outskirts of Cairo, Egypt, which was pretty cool.
Very cool.
Especially, yeah, I'm a carpenter by trade, but I don't know if you know this, my undergrad is in architecture. So it was pretty cool to go to kind of the seat of architecture.
Oh, amazing. Amazing. Someday over coffee, you'll tell me all the rest of that story. Let's unpack your two tactical takeaways. The first one, find willing partners without barriers. What did you mean by this?
Yeah, so far too often we operate under rigid rules, and it keeps us confined. So what I meant by that is, you and I are doing work in this space with a lot of other colleagues, but even those 20, 25, 30 people, we cannot do this by ourselves. Mm-hmm. So we need to, in my opinion, examine the landscape, especially in light of the lack of mental health professionals in the United States. And I'm a big supporter of moving towards the certified peer specialist model. Mm-hmm. We've done some great work in St. Louis with the LEAN program and the laborers, and that's now developed into an industry-wide network called the St. Louis Building Trades Wellness Coalition. Awesome. So, those are really key points.
Yeah. So I remember first 72 hours we had, well, first of all, I got the notification when I was driving. I had pulled over, but 3 kids in the car. It was not ideal. And I don't know how we would have done it differently because it was just my mother telling me, but the notification really does matter because it is a very, very traumatic experience. The other issue we had in the first 72 hours was my brother's car was impounded, and the car had very big, meaningful significance to him, to my father, to all the stuff. So it was very emotional. And when you said willing partners, one of the things that I remembered was that victims assistance was able to mobilize really quickly. And it turned out we had a personal school connection. We all went to the same school together, Bowdoin College in Maine, the director of victims assistance, my dad, me, my brother. So we had this personal connection. She mobilized the victims assistance units to meet us there. And what could have been a big hassle ended up being, we're going to sort this out because it was the police, right? So those were some of the things. And then the last part that the workplace got, not necessarily related to your willing partners without borders piece, but the practical assistance part really did matter. I was in no space to process feelings or talk about what this meant to me or just blah blah. I just needed to figure out how to breathe again, figure out what was going to happen to my kids. And one of the things that my supervisor instinctively did, because she's a gorgeous soul, is within the first 72 hours, she brought over a vat of chicken soup. It's my chicken soup story. I said, Jareen, I haven't showered or slept in 3 days. She's like, it's okay. Just meet me in the driveway. I got soup. I know none of you are eating. It's got all the food groups. It's got some vegetables in there. Just sip it every once in a while and stay hydrated. And it was just such a kind, nurturing thing to do. So anyway, back to your idea about willing partners without barriers. What were some of the kinds of partners you're thinking about here?
Well, for one, we need to get the buy-in from not just the companies who employ people who may die by suicide, but their customers as well. Mm-hmm. So in the world of construction, it's not just the contractor. It may be the unions. It may be the buyers and owners of construction. And sadly, it's just kind of human nature. We react to things. We're not being proactive. A lot of people have heard of suicide prevention. A lot of people have heard of suicide intervention. And what I found out, few people know much about suicide postvention. So as I often say, the time, when your house is on fire, the time to go to Target and buy a fire extinguisher is not when your house is already lit up. Mm-hmm. It's months ahead of time. And so these are the groups that we need to engage, because what we try to do in that early stage, those first a couple of days, we need to try to stabilize the situation and part of that stabilization is reaching out and addressing everyone's needs, because all our needs are different. So, I have 3 other children, and the oldest one versus the youngest one, whether they're girls or boys, in their relationship with their brother John, they're all 3 different relationships. So they had different needs. My wife's needs were different than my needs. So we have to have an array of those resources available. AFSP just recently came out with the 1-hour caring communities on postvention. A colleague of mine and I presented that to the elevator constructors here in St. Louis recently. And it was amazing. One of the contractors got up and shared a story about how last year one of their employees had passed, had died by suicide on the job. And sadly, they didn't notify the spouse until 7 hours later.
Whoa.
That's not how you treat human beings, in this situation. It's going to be tragic enough that your loved one passed away, but to be kept in the dark for that long, that's just and a lot of that, sadly, is because we don't know what we don't know, right?
They're deer in the headlights, yeah.
And so there are a number of wonderful examples out there for postvention in different sectors of the economy. The K through 12 system, has some good models. Veterinarians, I tell people that, and they're like, "What?" Like, yeah, do your research, and you'll find out they have a very high suicide rate, and so they've done some good work in that area as well. When I was a kid, it was dentists, so they have some good work out there. So look at the other models that are available, see how they apply, or if they apply. I think one of the best ones is the TAPS model, a military-based model. And they don't really look at things in a timeline. They look at them in phases. So their first phase is stabilization, and that's the piece you and I probably needed in those first 48 hours. It's someone to listen to, someone to lean on, not try to fix you or me.
Make sure the kids got fed, drive me to the airport.
Right.
Very basic kinds of things. Yeah.
Yeah, so their second phase is grief work, and their third phase is post-traumatic growth. But those 2 phases are down the road. When I shared with you before, back in the third quarter of 24, I took 8 calls over 12 weeks related to suicide, and those people weren't calling me, Sally, and saying, "John, what do I do 3 weeks from now, 3 months from now, 3 years from now? What do I do right now?" And so that's where I think we have a lack of knowledge, and that was really the impetus, behind the study.
Yeah, and I think you think about other partners too that might be in many communities, chaplains, sometimes faith leaders if they're educated on the nuances and subtleties and importance of compassionate conversations around suicide. They can be very helpful for people. I think loss survivors who are 10, 15 years out are incredible. And we've got the whole loss model, the loss team model coming out of Louisiana, where that's part of the process. They get deployed to the death notification and the connection within the first day or 2 to say, I know it's not possible that you see this, but you'll live through this. You'll live through this. I've lived through it, and I'm here to tell you it's possible. And I'm here to support you. And what a gift that message is for someone who's just been totally shattered. All right, let's go to the next one. Speaking of engage, train peer supporters. Tell us a little bit more about that.
Yeah, so I really have had a great opportunity here in St. Louis to work with one of the what I consider the pioneering models, and that is the LEAN program with the laborers at LIUNA. So the LEAN is an acronym, stands for Laborers Escaping Adversity Now. St. Louis took a different spin. It's kind of the second generation. The first generation was in the Massachusetts area, but their focus was almost totally on opioid use disorder. So when we brought it to St. Louis, we wanted to expand it because we believed in what I call the troubling trinity. We believe mental health is connected to the opioid crisis, and that is also connected to suicide, and suicide's connected back to mental health as well. And so we took a broader approach and trained up our peer supporters here to address the issues. And of course, they walked a mile in those shoes. Both of those are not only 15 plus year members in the trade, but they're also 5 to 10 years in sobriety themselves. Mm-hmm. And so it's interesting because people obviously weren't sure how it was going to play out, but the bottom line, it's working really well, so well that success may destroy them if we don't contain it. And what I mean by that is, Sally, they're actually getting calls, not just from other states, but from other trades. Mm-hmm. They just took a call the other day from Chicago electricians, and their trust fund, that binds them to the 11,000 beneficiaries of that trust fund. So what we've done is we've found other trades who are now wanting to model that mm-hmm. program, sure. But tailor it to their needs, right? Because not everyone has that cash flow that they have to support 2 full-time workers doing that. So I mentioned the elevator constructors earlier. What they've done is they've reached out, and 5 journey level workers that have identified that, yes, we would like to become peer supporters. So we're vetting them through a system and sending them through training. Nice. And it's now a couple other trades have stepped up, which is really interesting, the bricklayers and the electricians. And so that the 2 peer supporters with Lean don't have to recreate the wheel every 6 months, every time a new trade steps up. We've created what we call the St. Louis Building Trades Wellness Coalition. And we're meeting right now on a monthly basis to cover these areas, and hopefully encourage some of the trades that are on the fence to move towards a model that suits their needs. So like with the elevator constructors, those are pure volunteers. They're journey level workers, 5 days a week. When they've got time, they deal, as volunteers as peer specialists. So to the general employer out there who's trying to figure this out, what would you say to him or her about why peer support is so important in the immediate aftermath of a suicide death at work? I would say it's very important. Again, I go back to that word, to stabilize the situation mm-hmm. in the context of everyone who's impacted. So as well as I know, Sally, 10 years ago, we used to be told as researchers that one suicide impacted 6 people. Mm-hmm. And thanks to work out of the University of Kentucky back in 2018, we now realize it's 135 people. So if we're having 50,000 suicides in the United States a year or around there, and it impacts 135 people, each one of those, we're speaking upwards of 6-7 million people impacted in the United States on an annual basis. So in your workplace, whether you have 5 or 10 people, their connection to that individual, whether it was near or far, was a unique connection, and therefore they have to be handled uniquely. We don't know a lot of people's personal mental health history, and this may be a triggering event for them to say they looked up to that individual. They said, well, if that was their solution, why can't that be my solution? So in the context of preventing suicide contagion, we really need to step up and step in and make sure people's needs are met where those needs are specific to them. So you can't force people to go to therapy, but we should at least offer that if it's necessary. And that's the beauty of the peer support model, is that it's not therapy. I refer to them maybe sacrilegiously in a sense that they're traffic cops. That they're people you can lean on and expect to have a listening ear and have some options of resources that you may want to pursue.
Yeah,
And
this is a really important point because a lot of times the employer will say, well, somebody called the EAP, they need to come down here stat, and then somebody gets sent, and maybe they'll do like a 15, 20-minute briefing somewhere in some break room or something about suicide grief. And then they'll set up hours to meet with people and nobody comes. And that's because
yeah,
they don't need a therapist in that moment. They need someone just to sit and listen or whatever, drive the kids to school, the
right,
practical assistance and just presence. And especially peer allies who have not only the lived experience of the work, like we understand how this person how their day goes because we work alongside them, but also maybe
right.
have lived experience of surviving a suicide loss. That is a double whammy peer support moment where the connection there is incredibly high trust. And if that peer support can say, hey, I know a thing or two of some things we can look at together when you're ready, they can help them be, down that path. So I think a lot of times employers are like, oh my God, we got to get the expert here. Check the box. We did it. We brought him in for the 20-minute briefing. Nobody came. I guess we don't need him. Moving on. And that is the wrong idea.
Right.
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 All right. So
I
I'm going
mean,
to go. Yeah, go ahead.
you and I understand that they want to get back to a normal course of business, but let's face it, this is not normal, and the normal that existed won't be there anymore. So it's going to be a new normal.
Right. And it has the other part people should know is this has a long tail. This is not like
Yes.
3 days later, everybody's back to business and can function. This is often rocking people's like ideas about their own mortality and like what happened,
Yes.
where is their soul and like all kinds of big things are happening. And let alone if there was a witness situation. So it's not going to get resolved in 3 days. You're not going to have, the inner circle
Right.
people come bouncing back and being able to create the widget. So understanding that the one-time EAP thing, it's fine. It doesn't hurt anything. It's good optics. And at least people know that the resource exists and that the employer cared enough to mobilize the resource. All good. All good. But just know probably not as effective as peer support in that moment. All right, I'm going to go ahead and do a quick wrap up. I'm coming back to you for the final thoughts. So we're here again
Okay.
with John Gaal from St. Louis area, Missouri, expert on many things related to this conversation. But the point we're making today is that he's sharing his findings from research that he's been doing on what needs to happen in the first 48 to 72 hours, the acute phase of postvention, and really bringing in other partners in your area, in your workplace to help with this is really important because one person can't do it all. And there's different needs from different types of partners. And then the second piece is EAP, not bad thing. They're certainly going to come with their tools, but maybe not the thing that's needed most in the acute phase. What's needed often most in the acute phase is a peer, someone to stay there and listen, who knows a thing or two about the experience of either suicide loss or what it means to work in this area. And we're going to fill the show notes with all kinds of resources and models that we talked about. John, what's the major thing you want to make sure that people do not miss?
Yeah, I would say that I think it's my call to action would be, and it's based on my research, that in order for us to make progress in reducing the suicide rate, we need to refocus. We need to connect the three legs of the suicide triangle: prevention, intervention, postvention. And until we do, and if we keep operating in silos, we're going to get the results that we always got. So if we can connect those three legs, and postvention, you know as well as I know, the research shows us that a good postvention equals good prevention.
That's right. That's a Frank Campbell, the grandfather of all things postvention said, yeah, postvention is prevention for everyone left behind. And it speaks volumes when it's skipped over.
Right.
Um, Thank you so much, John. If people want to continue to connect with you, what's the best way for them to do that?
I would say reach out to me on my work email, and that is jgaal@mowrks.org. So jgaal@moworks.org.
Great. And if you want to hear our other conversation, literally, John and I could have 5 full hours of multiple topics, and we would not have exhausted all the things that John has to share. On our other podcast, we talk about repetitive head injury and its connection to depression and suicide, especially in sports. So if you're interested in that, come over to the Hope Illuminated podcast and listen to our conversation there. John, a pleasure as always. You have a very large brain and lots of things to share from your heart and your knowledge and your ever-growing, expanding things. I think this is not retirement. You are contributing more and more every day to helpful conversations about what we can do better here. So grateful that you made time today for this conversation.
Thank you so much for the opportunity, Dr. Sally. Much appreciated.
You're welcome. And thank you to the team behind the scenes here making this come to life, Chase and Stacy and Elias and Dave and all the folks really supporting this work. And thank you all the listeners for making it a priority for your day. If you liked it, please comment, rate, and share it. In closing, working minds work well together. There's lots we can do to learn from each other and improve the well-being of our workplaces. Until we meet again, take care.